damn straight and an amen. So I'll be on cloud 9 the rest of the evening. So thank you for that.
The people that are making the decisions about trucking don't know anything about it, for one thing. It's not a complex business, but it's a hard business, and it's got to have human beings. And we're running out of human beings because the trucking companies don't want to change their attitude towards the drivers. They can't get anybody to walk in the door to go hire them, because you're not going to send these young people out for 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months at a time. They're not going to put up with this.
That the message in transportation, it seems like we have, like they said, like 4 million drivers in the United States, but this never happens. They never come to us. The news, the presidents, all them, they always go to the ATA, the mega carriers, and talk to them. They never do come to the independents or the drivers that are out here doing it, and then the mega carriers pick their selected few drivers out. So they're really getting a biased response to their questions and what the message that's being delivered. So I think this is really important, because you're getting to the heart of the drivers, not just the chosen few that the ATA, American Trucking Association, has picked out. I mean, I'm a lease operator.
I'm a company driver.
Company driver, and if you talk to these guys, we've been visiting here just since we've been sitting here, and all of us are in agreement that this is what needs to be done. When the White House wants to talk to truckers, they should reach out to all the truckers, not just their selected mega carriers. So that's why I'm here. I promote it, and I think it's awesome. Whether he gets elected or it's really nothing about him. It's really about getting the message for trucking out. I've been in the industry 34 years, put 3 kids through college for it. Trucking has made me a good living. So probably along with all the rest of these guys too. So that's why I'm here. I did watch a couple hours of him, and he does seem kind of spicy.
As a part of what I want to do today with Lee's help is to have an open conversation with you all about what we're able to do to address certain foundational issues in this country. I want to start with one of them, which is actually honoring and respecting the Canadian envoy, the Freedom Envoy, who, frankly, a year ago was the front lines of exposing a lot of the corruption, not just in the United States, but in the West. You all remember that?
Yep.
When you had a number of Canadian truckers, cross-border truckers included, who stood up against the unjust COVID-19 vaccine mandates, who stood up against a lot of the unjust policies, locking down our economy and otherwise, and had the courage to do what many of us in this country otherwise didn't, to actually take a stand and say hell no to a government that had reached far beyond its legal scope. My eyes to say that these are the guardians of freedom in this country. Not just in this country, but in the West, in Canada, the United States alike. And so since then, I've taken an interest in a lot of the policies affecting our truckers. You know, people don't show up to do something like that unless they actually have a properly motivated reason to do it. So why the heck were these truckers properly frustrated on behalf of the rest of it? Part of it was the COVID-19 mandates, but part of it was a deeper failure to stand for the backbone of our economy. A few years since the Canadian trucker issue, and so picked up bits and pieces, but there's a lot more still to learn.
How about the American truckers? Don't worry about the Canadians.
What's that?
Don't worry about the Canadians. They can stay up in Canada. Worry about the truckers in America.
Exactly, yeah, no, absolutely.
Same thing with Mexico. They can come up to 150 miles, but we can't go to Mexico.
Why not?
We're not allowed to go to Mexico. That's Mexican rule.
It's a Mexican rule. Interesting.
Yes, that's the government rule. We can't go to Mexico. Our trailers going, but our trailers don't come back because they hijacked them.
Interesting.
And that's a fact, because I had 2 trailers hijacked off me.
2 what?
2 trailers got hijacked.
Who took them?
It went into Mexico, didn't come back over.
See, that's the other thing, is I think the theft is a big issue. I mean, people aren't, for all the regulations that we have, look at the theft that you see on a regular basis. And so for me, America First is Mexico shouldn't apply restrictions to us that somehow we're not applying to people on the other side of that border. My obligation as your next president is to the citizens of this country, not any other one. That's what it means to put this country first. I learned something right there. And that's shameful. That's simple things that have got to end to say, actually, we're going to prioritize our own. If Mexico's applying those restrictions, why wouldn't we in the other direction? So, what's your name, man?
Jim.
Do you drive?
Yes.
Take somebody who's behind the wheel, you get a really different perspective than the people who've been sitting behind a desk.
Mexican drivers coming over here, what's their record compared to, and their requirements compared to U.S. drivers?
Yeah, what would you say, Lee, in terms of the Mexican drivers driving cross-border in this direction versus...
I'm going off the cuff because I don't pay attention to it, but a lot of that has to do with when NAFTA was through and there was government
We got
pilot
screwed in that.
programs that were put in place for somebody to come over here. Their companies had to have a certain safety rating before they were allowed to come over. And they're only supposed to go so many miles, but because of NAFTA and then USMCA, a lot of that stuff got changed. And the way some of the regulations are in this book, drivers aren't accounted for if you're in a free trade zone, which is a little secret. You don't have to follow a lot of regulations if you're in that. So when you just keep crossing the border, they just keep going and people lose track of them, of regulations that truck drivers have to know. Every quarter, this gets changed or added. The rules in here go all the way back to when ICC was still in charge, and they just keep adding. They refuse to look at this and start over. All of the people that come up with these regulations have no clue what we do for a living as truck drivers. So thank you for at least coming and listening and starting the discussion, and hopefully everybody else does.
Can I ask you a question about that, just on principle, Lee, just to kick that off about that book? Do you think it's better to work within that, or do you think it's just better to toss it in the trash and start with a blank slate?
Some things need to be in here. I will give them that. And I'm not saying we're all opposed to regulation. You do need to have regulations, and it's mostly to protect the company drivers.
Totally.
Because owner-operators, we're not out here to kill anybody, as a big misconception. We want to get home to our families safe. But under some of these regulations that are outdated and do not conform with the equipment that we have, it makes it very hard. So you do need some, I'll give you that. But you could set this down in a truck stop and I'll bet everybody downstairs could tear this apart.
Yeah. I mean, I know you need some. Would you reform that, or would you just start from scratch but write up the principles from scratch? Because that's the way I'm oriented more, but I'm listening to somebody who has experience.
I would say you have to keep some.
Okay.
Very few. I mean, you could trim this down to 60 pages and go from there. Because there is some things that do protect drivers against the government. If the government would stand up for the drivers, we're supposed to be protected.
Right. Familiar to me, where you have a government that the only thing they know how to do is to rain green pieces of paper from on high like manna from heaven, when in fact that doesn't automatically solve a problem, especially if you have a money printer at the Federal Reserve that's on hyperdrive all the time. Unplug the damn thing to start with, and it forces you to actually look at what the underlying real problems actually are. So my sense is we're 40,000 trucking spaces short. I'm told it's 10 to 1, 11 to 1 in terms of trucks on the road relative to actual parking spaces. And one of the things I learned on the drive over here, was that the EDL? Was that the electronic? EDLD. EDLD, the electronic device. I mean, I gotta say, even for the truckers who are in here, I'm sorry for being a little bit late. And we had a long day with about 8 events before we came here. But I know that your entire line of work depends on time, respect for exactly every minute. But we see that appallingly every day, apparently every shift. You spend an hour looking for a parking spot because of that 11 to 1 ratio. So writing a check doesn't make parking spaces magically appear. Truckers are burning more fuel looking for parking spots, an hour per shift more. It doesn't make sense for anybody, right? Everybody loses on that. And so, Lee, as I said, I'm not an expert in this. I don't know the first thing, but I can bring some common sense principles. It's not the hyperdrive Federal Reserve raining money from on high, but maybe allow people to have an incentive to expand more parking spots, loosen some of those restrictions on being able to commercially do business at those trucking stops and give people those incentives. And then those EPA regulations, they're self-defeating. Actually allow people to expand those truck stops to be able to stop that parking spot shortage. So tell me if you think any of that made sense off the top of your head, but that seems like common sense to me.
Yep. Another question has to do with training. A few years ago, FMCSA came up with training standards new for entry-level drivers. When they said it, all the stakeholders got together and agreed that there should be a time limit for behind-the-wheel training. Since then, FMCSA took it out, said drivers sitting behind a seat for training shows no bearing on the better drivers. Is that something you would look into enforcing, saying there should be a time limit for new drivers to get behind the wheel training?
I think there should be. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. The logic behind that, I guess, Lee, is that to make sure that the actual minimal training is actually happening, right?
There was an accident in Colorado a few years ago. A lot of drivers remember it. Guy went down the hill, killed a bunch of people because he couldn't read the sign that said stop. You know,
Yep.
We'll pull off here for a runaway round. One of the requirements in this book is says if you're going to drive truck and have CDL, must be able to read, write, and speak English.
Yep.
FMCSA has told CVSA, which is another book down here, of enforcement on our division, not to put that as not a service. There's states in this country that offer the CDL test in 49 different languages.
Doesn't make any sense. So I just think this relates to a more fundamental view of my policies as U.S. president. We've lost our sense of national cohesion. Right? My parents, they're immigrants to this country. I'm the kid of legal immigrants to this country. We used to talk, when I grew up in the 1990s in Ohio, about this idea of the melting pot. You don't hear about that in the United States anymore. It's considered probably a microaggression, if you're to mention it. Well, I think that this country was founded on certain basic attributes we should share in common. That's what makes our diversity and our differences beautiful. And so, this has been a little bit controversially when I've offered this in the past, but I think every ballot in the United States, when you're voting, the sole language on that ballot should be English. I don't think that's too much to ask. I think that English should be the national language of the United States of America. That gives people a standard to say, there's a common language that binds us together. We're not founded on a monarch. We're not founded on a single religion. We're not founded on one particular ethnic heritage. And I think that's a good thing. That's America. We're founded on a set of ideals that unites us together. But if you're a nation founded on ideals, you have to be able to communicate those ideals with each other. If you don't have a common language, you can't do that. But even worse, now people are literally dying as a consequence as well. You have one system that at least binds us together across those differences. Without that, we're just a bunch of different looking higher mammals with a bunch of different shades of melanin and 2 legs, walking some geographic space we call a country, and sadly, occasionally getting hit by trucks that go off the wayside in Colorado. And I think that's wrong, and I think what happened there was sad, and I'm in no way going to make light of that at all, but to say that at least let it be a learning and a crude reminder that we have to have certain things that unite us as Americans. And I do think that a single language rule and the requirement to know that language, whether you're coming from Mexico or anywhere else, is a requirement to be able to. So Lee, what's that, I mean, what do you think about the training? Because that's one of the issues that's come up several times in my study of this, going around mountains or other more complex
There's a lot
terrain.
of different scenarios that people have put together. Some people say that drivers should have like a graduated license. You have a star or something. I like what a kid when they get their temps and stuff.
Yep.
You can run the Midwest until you get to the next level. Then you have to do mountain training until the next
That
level.
makes sense to me,
Something
actually.
needs to be looked at to work on to make sure that drivers from the south that come up here and go further north understand the conditions.
Under snow, ice,
Yes.
mountainous terrain.
A lot
I
of
mean, it's a
Texas
completely,
guys struggle up here, driving,
it's a totally different sport, right?
yeah.
Try down this pass go in the winter. I just did it.
Well, sir, I appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate candidates when they come to Iowa, because people in Iowa know what they're talking about generally.
Yes, they do.
I'm
I've
with
gotten
the-
a sense for that.
I'm with the Teamsters Union, and we represent a lot of truckers. That's why I'm
Nice.
excited to have you here. We represent truckers in Iowa. A lot of our members, contrary to popular belief, are registered Republicans. But our
That doesn't shock me.
Yeah, it doesn't shock us either. But and we have a lot of
Restoring judgment. I do think that that's one of the areas where the regulatory regime has gone in the direction of one cookie cutter top down solution. I don't think that's the way we should be operating our regulations. I think we need somebody, I mean, this is probably another example of the people who lead a regulatory body like the FMCSA having not the first clue of what the heck it is that they're actually regulating. I mean, I would say multiple people in this room would probably be better suited than the average person who sat on top of the FMCSA for the course of the last 25 years.
I don't drive my truck no more. The company does it for me.
Well, I mean, you know what's it?
Yeah, I'm dead serious. They put eSmart in my truck, means I don't have control of my throttle no more.
Exactly. There's no discretion, and we're losing one of our most valuable asset in this country. As beautiful as our nation is, the people, our human capital, the actual individual human beings who actually make our economy turn. That's our most valuable asset. And here we're crushing that out of existence. And so one thing basic, this shouldn't be controversial. The Department of Transportation should be led by somebody who actually has expertise, some knowledge at least of transportation, rather than somebody who is, I don't know, a failed mayor who knows more about paternity leave policies than knows about the actual thing that they're supposedly regulating. And the same goes for the FMCA, some city sewage person who has never sat behind the wheel trying to actually regulate the people who actually do. That's a basic place where we've got to start. I'm getting a head start on thinking about, should I be successful in this as we hope to be? What does that actually look like? That's where presidents have failed. I respect a lot of what President Trump did for this country, but one of the learnings from that is he wasn't ready with the kinds of people who you needed to put in the positions. You say you want to drain the swamp, but it ends up being more of a wish than a reality unless you have the SWAT team really ready for it. So, I'll always respect the people who came before me, Trump included, but we want to build on that and take this actually to the next level. Don't make this just, for me, this isn't lip service today. This is the beginning of the kinds of people who we're going to put into those positions that actually take advantage of the valuable assets of the, I would say, highly intelligent and motivated people who are in this industry for a reason. Don't turn them into machines. I think we're actually going to be worse off if we do that versus harnessing the power of actual discretion, judgment, and the innovation that comes from that. That's, I think, how we're going to, once again, unlock the power of this industry. We've all been tamed by this new culture that tries to put us in a straitjacket. And I think when we rallied behind the cry to make America great again, I did. We didn't just hunger for a single man. We hungered for the unapologetic pursuit of excellence, for our freedom, for our identity as Americans, for who we are as citizens of this country. And to the people who are on the front lines, I'll tell you, I didn't come here, you don't endorse me, I endorse you, okay? That's why I'm here. Nobody else, I think, has really paid attention to, I think, the backbone of who our country actually depends on to provide our modern way of life. You will be forgotten no more. My path to the American dream should not be the only path. And you know what? If you do work hard and get ahead in this country, whatever your path is, with your own dedication and your own commitment, you should be able to achieve anything you set your mind to and be rewarded for the contributions that you make. So thank you to the truckers of this country. Thank you to the truckers who are in this room. God bless you. And may God bless our United States of America. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Just take a quick picture.
Thank you. Yeah, on the way out. Yeah, they're dragging me out. Here, he'll take one. That's what we want. That's exactly right. You know Thomas Paine.
1, 2, 3.
He started the American Revolution. You know what his pamphlet was called? Common Sense. That's right. You from here in Iowa?
No, I'm from Ohio.
Oh, you're the home stater. That's right. That's right. Good.
Thank you, guys.
It says Kenworth. It's a brand. It's a real truck. Wow. It's like a real truck brand truck there. Kenworth.
Truckstop. It's the world's biggest truck stop in the whole world. It's so giant.
It's kind of humbling, actually. There's some things I know a lot about. It's not one of the areas where I know a ton about. I thought we had a great conversation, and I gave you my principles, but I learned as much as I contributed at this event.